You missed the top. Oh!
Hey, you're finally awake.
Have you ever wanted to be a Viking? Have you ever wanted to visit Asgard? Sail the icy Nordic waters? Or even perhaps visit Jotunheim? Because I only do 2 of those things. Welcome to Fjordur. As per usual, I had absolutely no idea what I was in for. As for the challenge itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. I will be playing the full 100 days trying to beat this map on beta because I'm a wuss. I bring shame to the family. Anyways, there's no need to explain the challenge because literally everybody else has done it, so let's just buckle in and watch this swashbuckling adventure. Wait, swashbuckling is for pirates. Viking buckling adventure, because that's a word. Oh, I need to stop talking. Okay, but seriously, I hope you guys enjoy the video because I had a lot of fun making it. Roll film. Day 1, I pulled my lazy butt off of the sand and it was time to get to work. I was still in Tier 1 poverty, so I needed to collect the basic resources, as we all know, so I could reach Tier 2 poverty. It's like being a Pokemon sub, but cooler. I needed food, so I set up a campfire and began killing things so I could eat. But while I was wandering around looking for stuff to murder, I found this Giga. Fortunately, I didn't catch his aggro, but I can't say I exactly enjoyed seeing a Giga on day 1. I was using lower experience rates for this playthrough and I noticed that levels were quickly becoming a problem. I didn't have any of the engrams I needed to be able to tame anything. That's okay though, I'll just construct a bob hut on this rock and pray the Giga doesn't come stomping down the beach. Also, did I mention that Fjordur is cold? Because it's cold. Really cold. As it got dark, there was a drop nearby, which I ventured out to go get, but I didn't have enough levels to open it up, so I just ran back to my hut and hid in there to stay warm. I emerged on day 2 to find this level 140 Pteranodon right outside my base. And somehow, by sheer dumb luck, I managed to find some trank arrows in a drop, so I was able to knock it out. And what's with all the high levels on these non-story maps? Because I knocked out this level 130 Pteranodon. I'm not complaining, I'm just confused. It didn't take me too long after that to find this high-level Parasaur and tame it. Because I'm extraordinarily big-brained, I thought it would be a good idea to wander into this nearby cave with it. Nothing happened, but I did find these weird things on the ground and it gave me a ton of crystal. Like, what the heck? I hurried back home with the loot and knocked out the level 140 Pteranodon. It wasn't a breeding pair, but 2 high levels? I can't complain about that. Unfortunately, by that point, it started getting dark again, so I had to retreat back into my hut so I didn't become a choofy-sickle. While I was waiting out the cold in the morning of day 3, I noticed that the taming bar for the level 130 Pteranodon had disappeared. I went outside and I couldn't find it anywhere, meaning it died. Because of course.
I'm fine. This is fine. This'll work out.
Fortunately, the 140 tamed up, so we're all good. After I upgraded my drip to hide armor, I spent the rest of the day crafting a whole bunch of foundations, so 1, I could get a bunch of experience, and 2, I would have a bunch of foundations for when I found my final base location. Thanks to all that foundation making, I finally had the levels and experience to get myself a Pteranodon saddle engram on day 4. Now it was time to explore somewhat safely from the skies. I got momentarily distracted though by this level 140 female Pteranodon, which would be a perfect breeding partner. And there were some really good candidates for a base location, like these castle walls that I found. It seemed to have plenty of space on the inside, so I could find a way to make it work. I continued exploring and actually found Helm's Deep, which I actually wasn't too surprised. I had seen it in a video before, but it didn't make it any less cool. Being the Lord of the Rings nerd I am, I went inside and found a cave in the back, and also discovered that there were cave creatures in there, so I noped out of there. I kept seeing Deinonychus nests all over the place, and eventually plucked this level 145 egg. I really had no experience with the Deinonychus, but I had an egg now. In the end, I settled on the idea of building a giant keep within the castle walls. It was gonna be cool. Day 5, I began moving all the foundations I had crafted on day 3 to the castle. While I was doing so, I spotted a level 140 griffin and wanted it immediately. I quickly constructed up a trap that I found online from Captain Fat Dog and was able to trap one with complete ease. And then I realized it was a level 55 and not the 140. So I killed it. The second time around, I managed to get the correct griffin in there, and it used just about every single trinket I had to knock it out, but it was mine. While I waited for it to get hungry so I could tame it, I went around looking for drops, and all of them were complete dookus. Day 6, I grabbed a whole bunch of Deinonychus eggs while I waited for the griffin to tame, but eventually gave up and just AFK'd because I was bored. Eventually it did tame though, and I spent a good chunk of time messing around on it. Thankfully I didn't need a saddle to ride it because I had absolutely no hide. The weight on it was pretty decent, so I used it to help me place a bunch of foundations inside the castle. Now, nothing would spawn. The next task on the agenda for me was to be able to make cryopods. I still needed a couple things, but I wanted to be ready. One of the things I needed was polymer, so day 7 I spent a lot of time looking for organic polymer. I couldn't really find any mantises in the volcano area, so I just explored a little bit and ended up in the swamp. And that's where I met this lonely little Caprisuchus. Poor guy was so attention starved, he literally dove me off my mount in a hug.
No, 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 no. Wait. Wait.
I don't really need to say anything here, do I? Eventually, I finally made it back to the castle. Was able to grab a pteranodon and got my stuff back. I wasted a whole day doing this. Day 8 in the swamp, I found these carcasses lying around, and I found that when you hit them, you actually get organic polymer. Which is amazing, actually. I needed that. With my new goodies, I was finally able to craft some cryopods. Not a lot, but it would do for now. Later on, I came across this rune, which is this red-looking thing. It's the equivalent of an explorer's note and gives me an XP boost for a short amount of time. With that XP boost, I went around and killed some alpha raptors for their experience, and because they gave me these rune stones that I would need to summon some of the middle bosses later. I may have been playing this blind, but I still wanted to know how to actually beat the map. On day 9, I began moving my parasaur and resources from my bob hut to my soon-to-be base. I started mass crafting narcotic because I planned on taming a Dodic so I could get a bunch of stone, as always. While I was waiting for them to craft, I actually found this blueprint for a journeyman megatherium saddle. That was huge. Eventually, I did venture over to the volcano island and found a Dodic and knocked him out before finding a max level Volanosaur. I decided to go with the big bald method that I used on Extinction to knock it out and hid behind this rock, and I came so stinking close on several occasions. I managed to knock it out fortunately, but oh boy. I forgot how dangerous those things were. The Volanosaur finished taming, so I went home and set up a smithy so I could craft a Dodigerous saddle. I managed to make it back in time for the Dodic itself to tame and gave it a very creative name. Day 10, I was in dire need of wood, and that meant one thing.
A beaver.
Fortunately, there was a pond full of them right next to the castle, so I just went over there and singled out the best one, killed the rest, and knocked him out. After killing a nearby alpha raptor, I harvested a ton of berries because I still needed a ton of narcotic. I also decided to raid the beaver dams. Great source of wood and cementing paste, as everyone knows, but it was at great peril. I nearly died again. I decided to play it easy in the evening and just work on my foundation. Day 11, I still needed a source of water inside my base, so a lot of time was spent building up a pipe system. Towards the end, I was actually able to build through the walls using the orbital camera. If I stood in the right position while facing exactly the right direction while in orbital camera, I was actually able to put stuff down, so I ended up with this weird pipe system going straight through the castle wall. The remainder of the day was mostly spent working on my foundation. However, at one point, I started running short on fiber, so I needed to go look for Amashops to tame. And it didn't take me any time at all to find myself a high level. Day 12, I was a busy little man. I was raiding beaver dams, setting up behemoth gates for my castle, and looking for drops, like this red one, which was an absolute waste of time. Later on, I was messing around on my griffin, and I dipped a little too close to this pond, where this baryonyx thought I looked like a delicious snack. Good thing I have these pteranodons though, so I was able to get my stuff back. Later on, I found this tech stegosaurus that was a high level, and I couldn't resist, so I knocked it out. Not too far away from it, I came across this village, and there was this whole little pen fenced-in area that had a bunch of veggies that I could just pluck straight out of the ground. Huh, well that's convenient. While I waited for the stegosaurus to get hungry, I just messed around on my griffin some more and found this alpha carno. And I died again, because of the water.
Also stroke.
Man, I hate the water. So, of course, I had to use my Pteranodon buddy system to get my stuff back and my revenge. On day 13, the tech stegosaurus finished taming. This whole time, I kept my eye out for a Rex. I wanted to get an early start on breeding an army. Coincidentally, it didn't take me too long to find this max level male with a high health stat, so I knocked him out. Not long after that, I found another male with a high melee stat. Now all I needed was a female, so they could make babies. On day 14, the Rexes were still getting hungry, so I wandered around looking for drops, and I found this red drop with an apprentice Ankylosaurus saddle. After my first and second Rexes tamed, I worked on my foundations at home for a little bit and raided the beaver dams again. That evening, I went out looking for a female Rex. I figured I was this close, so I might as well. I eventually ended up finding this level 130 female Rex with 30 points in health. I did some more drop hunting on day 15 while I waited for the Rex to tame. That's where I found another red drop with a Mastercraft Andrewsarchus saddle. That would be incredibly helpful for a plan I had later on. Then I found this level 168 Tech Stegosaurus male, which would be a perfect breeding partner for my female back home. After knocking that out, I went back to my female Rex, which finished taming up. When I got home, I let the Rexes get acquainted with one another before crafting myself a fabricator. I wasn't gonna place it yet because my base wasn't complete, but at least I had it. Then I kinda just goofed off while I waited for my Stegosaurus to tame, and I found this really cool cave that had a bunch of names in it. I thought the place was really cool and spent a good amount of time just looking around. Before I got murked by this Allosaurus that followed me in anyway. I couldn't even be mad at that. It was kinda funny. My tech Stegosaurus was also done taming, so I took him home and began mating. Pause. Day 16, I made myself an S+ hatchery, but I needed re-fertilizer in order to power it. So I built myself up a small little dung beetle pen and got ready to go tame a couple. I ventured over to the volcano island once more and found 2 high levels right next to each other. I tamed them and brought them home, where I would wait for them to make fertilizer for me. While I waited for them to do that, I went drop hunting, and surprise, surprise, everything I found was useless. At the end of the day though, I had my first fertilizer, so I was able to start incubating my eggs in the hatchery. The morning of day 17 was spent entirely looking for Maywings. They were elusive for whatever reason, and I just couldn't seem to find any high levels. I did, however, find this Rex with a high melee stat, so I knocked it out. Then, after being persistent for almost the rest of the day, I did find a level 130 and 140 Maywing right next to each other. I tamed them both as well as the Rex and then headed home to breed them. Day 18, I wanted to work more on my base, but I would need a creature with a better weight than my griffin had, so I went to go find an RG. I found a max level with a good weight stat and thought it would do nicely. Later on, with the small bit of oil I had collected from my dung beetles, I made some gasoline so I could power my generators when I finally had them. After that, I collected as many resources as I could carry so I could begin building my base that evening. Day 19, I poured a whole bunch of time and effort into constructing my base. The only break I took was for this red drop, and I don't know why I did that. I should know better by now. Day 20, I devised a more effective way of crafting all my structures. I don't know why it took me 6 videos to figure this out, but I could just put all the resources inside my S+ crafting station and just let it go to work. Now that I had a bit more time on my hands, I went around looking for drops, and I found this primitive blueprint for a shotgun. Then, I did something stupid, like I do in every video. I visited the Wyvern Trench. And yeah, I found this 190 egg and was able to maneuver away from them and get out of render. after I returned home, my structures had finished crafting, so I continued to build. Day 21, I was off looking for more drops, but once again, they were all poopy. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. The rest of the day was spent working on my base, and in the evening, I placed my fabricator. I honestly have no idea what happened to day 22. I think it got lumped together with day 23 in my notes, so it just kind of disappeared. Let's just move on to day 23. Day 23, it was time for me to finally set aside the building tools and head out to tame some more things. The fact that I was this far into the playthrough and still hadn't gotten a substantial amount of metal was kind of irritating, so I needed to go tame a gas bags and an ankylosaurus. For this, I would need to go to Asgard, but in Asgard they don't allow flyers, so I wouldn't be allowed to use my griffin. Therefore, I would use a Maywing instead, so I crafted a saddle. And anyone who's watched my extinction video will know how I wasted an entire day trying to tame a gas bags. Well, not this time. I had net projectiles and it made everything so much easier. Oh, would you look at that? A high-level Anky. How would you like to be my slave for all of eternity? While I waited for everything to tame, I decided to dump all of my valuables on the ankylosaurus and go after a lightning wyvern egg. This was a bad idea. Yeah, long story short, lightning wyverns aren't as forgiving as fire wyverns, and I got torn to pieces. That's alright though, getting back to the tames wasn't too hard. There was a reason I dumped all my stuff on the Anky. Day 24, I decided to take a break from the grind and go on a road trip to explore the map a little bit. Obviously, I couldn't explore it all in one day, but what I did see was pretty cool. When I returned home, I crafted myself a gas bag saddle and an ankylosaurus saddle and went on a small metal run as darkness fell. I also grabbed a whole bunch of crystal while I was at it. I would need it for construction later. Wait, why'd I craft another Anky saddle? I found a better one in a drop? Now I'm confusing myself. I began to make the castle a bit more like home on day 25. I set up a bunch of refining forges and began production on windows to increase the aesthetic or something. Why do I always build with windows? I also got my electricity system set up so I could finally start using refrigerators. Day 26, I set up my air conditioners, which meant I could finally start hatching things. I started with the Rexes, and I got no mutations, so I killed them. In hindsight, there were definitely better uses for these rejects, but yeah, I learned later. After that, I hatched some more Pteranodons and Maywings. Day 27, I began hatching and raising the Deinonychus eggs I had collected, but I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I was not impressed with those stats. Things were starting to get a bit cluttered in terms of animals, so I moved my Pteranodons to the upper wall so I could have more space down below. After this, my increased production in windows had drained my supply of crystal, so I went back down to that cave I visited on day 1 to get some more. I also didn't mention it before, but this cave was kind of like an aberration cave. I don't really know why that's important now, I just figured I'd say it. Day 28, I was back to construction. This took up most of the day once again. Even though I was not at all impressed with the Deinonychus stats I had, I decided I would move them to the upper wall so they were out of the way, and then see if I could get any mutations by breeding them. And I'm gonna be honest, I hardly ever used them again in this playthrough. I'll just try again on Valguero. Day 29, I saddled up on my gas bags and took my ankylosaurus with me back to Asgard so I could get a butt ton of metal. However, I did have a real scare when I spawned in because I spawned in right next to a couple shadow mains. I managed to make it out safely, yeah, but I may or may not have needed to change my pants afterwards. When I got back home, I set up a bunch of feeding troughs. I was tired of managing the meat and berries on everything. It's almost as if I started to play this game properly. Yeah, right. All of day 30 was just constructing my base. Yeah. Day 31, I wanted a mate for my Velonosaur, so I spent some time looking around the volcano island for one. I managed to find 2 in the exact same spot, and somehow, with great difficulty, knocked them both out. One of them got attacked by a bunch of stuff and lost a whole bunch of taming effectiveness, so I built this little makeshift trap thing around it and prayed that it would work. The first Velonosaur tamed, although then I realized it wasn't the gender I needed. So I had to wait for the other one to wake up, and because I'm such a smart little guy, I went after another fire wyvern egg just because I was there, and for whatever reason, there was no competition, it was just me and the egg. I was pretty sure there was a 190 flying around somewhere, but it must have been out of render. While I waited for the Velonosaur to wake up, I went back home and continued to work on my base, and then went on another crystal run in the Aberration Cave. Day 33, the Velonosaur had finished waking up, so I returned to the volcano island to knock it out again. And to be completely honest with you, this should have happened a long time ago, but my knockout method finally got me killed.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'm a little lost, but fair enough.
The Velonosaur was still focused on my griffin when I got back, so I managed to recover my stuff, but then a Rex attacked. And unfortunately, this would be the end of my attempt, because that Velonosaur was about to meet Jesus. Day 34, I hatched some more Deinonychus and Rex eggs. I kept all the ones with the favorable stats and killed the rest. Once these Rexes were fully grown, I would be able to use them to breed for consistent high stats in the babies. I was now in need of a caving creature, and what better than a kitty? I spent a good chunk of time looking around for a high level, and once I found one, I knocked it out. While I let it get a bit hungry so I could tame it, I went home and placed an industrial grill to cook some meat. Day 35, I began knocking out a female Thylacoleo with a high level that would be a good breeding partner. Unfortunately though, it fell asleep in the water, so it soon drowned. After that, I found a max level male and figured why not? At least then I could have some backup just in case one of them died. After my first and second Thyla tamed on day 36, I went home and crafted some grappling hooks to begin a caving spree. I first ventured into the Aberration Cave to see if I could find any cave drops. I did end up finding a Mastercraft Therizino saddle, but I would have preferred a blueprint, but I guess I can't complain about that. I then narrowly escaped death fighting the Spino and then returned home. Day 37, I visited another cave, and this one was a lava cave. This cave actually had two artifacts, the Clever and the Pack. On my way back, though, I fell. Oh my goodness, that Thyla didn't even last 3 days. I returned to the cave on my backup Thyla and managed to get all my stuff back, but I also had 2 close calls coming back out of the cave. I was working on a throne room in my little castle, and I figured it would be perfect to put the artifacts in there, so I set up some pedestals. After that, my new destination would be the volcano island, so I could get another artifact. This time it was in a cave that resembled Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings. The artifact was super easy to get. It was just run straight in, then run straight back out. Day 38, I made fur armor so I could head to the frozen areas to look for megatheriums. I needed them to fight the spider mummy later on. I looked all stinking day. I did not find a single one. When I did finally find them, they were both in their high 90s in terms of levels, and just frankly not very good, but I had to start somewhere. After they were both knocked out, I scavenged for beehives so I could tame them with greater effectiveness. On day 39, I found 2 high-level rhinos right next to each other, so I decided to knock both of them out. I made a pit stop back home so I could restock on narcotics and then grab some more veggies on my way back. After I returned, one of the rhinos got attacked, and frankly I just didn't care, so I killed it. I got super lucky later on and found a max level male megatherium and knocked it out. But not too much longer after that, a pack of hyenodons started attacking it, so I would have to wait for it to wake up. Day 40, I built a trap around the megatherium so it wouldn't get out after it woke up. I was getting a little bit impatient and wanted the megatherium to wake up faster, so I went and tamed this very low level parasaur and began harvesting stim berries so I could wake it up faster. I'm not even sure if this works anymore, but either way, I'm probably gonna get flamed in the comments anyway. Then a mammoth and Diodon started fighting right next to it, and I figured I could take them both on and, kind of killed the megatherium at the same time. Once the megatheriums and rhino had finished taming, I returned home and began breeding. After that, it was time to go looking for another cave drop. Hopefully a Rex saddle BP, hopefully a Therizino saddle BP. Day 41, I wanted to switch things up a little bit. I paid another visit to the Fire Wyvern Trench because I wanted to see if I could knock out a female so I could start raising my own, but nothing was spawning evidently, because it was empty. Rather than leaving though, I saw an opportunity and decided to do something dumb once again. I charged headfirst into the Magmasaur cave on my Thyla. To tell you the truth though, this cave was way easier than Genesis. It was a giant loop and all I had to do was run straight back out as soon as I nabbed an egg. When I returned home, I had my first Megatherium baby, and what do you know? It was a mutation! While that's great and all, the stats were still incredibly mid. For the rest of the day, I went looking for a breeding pair of Megalodons so I could start going through the ocean caves. And you know, as I do in every video, I would tame these things and then completely forget about them and never use them. Day 42, I scrapped together everything I would need to make 2 Megalodon saddles, and then later tamed a Basilosaurus. After that, I bred my Megalodons, but as I've already said, I would completely forget about them. At this point, I figured it was about time I go get another artifact, so I visited a snow cave on the very north side of the map. I actually really liked this entrance because it was hidden behind a rock. Nice touch, wildcard. You know what isn't a nice touch, though? My mom! The Purlovia that was hiding right behind it. Day 43, I returned to the cave on a Pteranodon. Fortunately, my Griffin and somehow my Pteranodon as well went to work on the creatures in there and killed quite a few. There were still a few enemies inside, but I managed to bait them out so my Griffin could handle them. And finally, the artifact was in sight. But then, of course, I contracted Mega Rabies. I returned once again on another Pteranodon, and this time I was finally able to get my stuff back and secure the artifact. After I left the cave, I got sidetracked by this max level Megatherium with a good health stat. Considering the ones I had at home were crap, I had to tame it. I also got a very good roll on the health stat once the Megatherium tamed, because he had 39 points in it. Day 44 was pretty chill, but an important day nonetheless. After I returned home with my new Megatherium, I had almost everything I needed to craft an industrial forge. I just needed oil. So I went around on my Basilo to kill other Basilos. I got some experience for it in the meantime, so it was a double whammy. I was finally able to craft my industrial forge, and the rest of the day was spent working on my base. And you know what? It was starting to look pretty good. I forgot to record day 45, but all I really did was build a giant Rex pen, so we good.
Your booze mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.
Day 46 was mostly just construction, which included finishing the aforementioned Rex pen from day 45. Later on, I was happy with my progress, so I decided to visit Asgard again for another metal run. This time, I got as much as I could carry. And you know what? On day 47, I still wanted more metal, so I made a pit stop at home to drop off everything I had already collected, and then went out for another run. With my fresh metal supply on day 48, I set up an industrial cooker, some more fridges, and a chemistry bench. I was still a bit overloaded with metal and wanted a second industrial forge, but for that, I would need more polymer. I checked for mantises on the volcano island and only found 2 before remembering that I could just go to the swamp biome and harvest it en masse from those carcasses. Upon returning home, I set up my second forge and began crafting narcotics for trank darts. I had almost all my boss creatures, Rexes and Megatheriums, but now I needed Therazinos for the dragon. I spent all day on day 49 looking for a good Therazino, but all of them were just trash. Finally, at the end of the day, I decided to settle on a level 90, just like the Megatheriums. Then I remembered I still had Rex babies to raise, so I had to rush home so I could get them imprinted. Then I had to rush back so I could feed the Therazino narcotics before it could wake up. Day 50 was almost the exact same, except this time I was looking for a female Therazino, finding nothing. I decided to give up and go home and begin grinding for Megatherium saddles. They were kind of expensive, especially when you consider I had to make 19 of them. At the end of the day, I had everything I needed to craft them, so I took a mind wipe tonic and began crafting. And you know what? The bonuses weren't too bad. Day 51, I gave my first batch of Rexes their final imprints. After that, I braced myself for another long and hard day of hunting for Therazinos. Except for the fact that the search didn't even last 20 seconds. I'm about to get flamed so hard in the comment section. I didn't spend too much time thinking about my luck though, I immediately sprang into action. I built 2 separate traps and then led each one into their respective trap. The rest of the day was spent scrapping together everything I needed to make a couple more pieces of exceptional kibble so I could finally tame the female that night. My luck continued on day 52 because after the male Therizino tamed, I saw that he had 47 points in melee. After I set both of the Theries to breed, I finally felt for the first time in this playthrough like I could actually beat the map. Then it was back to the caves to see if I could find any good loot. At this point, I really needed good blueprints for both Rex and Therizino saddles. I didn't find any good saddle BPs, unfortunately, but in the lava cave I did find a Mastercraft shotgun and a Mastercraft set of flak leggings. And then I died. Guys, this cave doesn't like me. Day 53, it was time to go get another artifact. This time I went to the cave with the artifact of the massive. I don't know what any of them are called, so that's what I'm rolling with. And this was the most fun I had ever had in a cave in ARK. It made it feel like an actual adventure. It was a winding labyrinth full of puzzles, booby traps, you name it. It was great. I was almost actually sad when I got the artifact. I wanted there to be more. Then I decided to tackle the underwater cave where the artifact of the Devourer is, and for whatever frickin' reason I did not bring my Megalodons. Just me and my Basilo, but then the game bugged and there was nothing spawning down there, which was good and bad at the same time. When I got to where the artifact was supposed to be, it wasn't there, so I had to relog. This was kind of scary because I thought I was gonna get attacked as soon as I logged back in, but the artifact was there, but nothing was spawning. So I got off scot-free without having to fight a single thing down there. I could go on and on about, oh, there should have been stuff there, but no, I'm really grateful. I hate underwater caves. Day 54, I continued my spelunking adventures and visited the cave with the artifact of the Sky Lord. This one was a snow cave, and you know how much I love snow caves. Fortunately, I had plenty of shotgun shells and high places to stand on so I could shoot down and deal with the critters. If you take away the bears, Perlovias, wolves, and all the nasties, then the cave itself was actually kinda cool. To be honest, I have no idea how I got to this artifact easier than some of the others, but you know what? Again, I'm not complaining. I returned home triumphantly now that I had another small handful of artifacts to place on their pedestals. Things were moving along. I died twice on day 55, which is pretty embarrassing considering I did nothing really dangerous. The first death came when I was being a bonehead down at the beaver dams. I decided I would be fine and be able to make it back to my griffin before they attacked, and no, that is not the case when you are completely encumbered with wood. The second death came while I was building my base, and there's no real need to explain what happened here. Day 56 was relatively uneventful. I hatched some Rexes in the morning and then acted like an NPC for the greater part of the day. Then I decided to visit Vanaheim for the first time to see if I could find any metal and crystal. I did not find any metal and I found very little crystal. It was not worth it. Day 57, I dropped off everything I had collected in Vanaheim and then continued on my merry way for another metal run. Then I passed this mountain with a very unusual amount of bears. I've never seen so many bears in one spot in my entire life, not even at a zoo. Day 58, I was still on my metal run. After I finished my metal run, I returned home to raid the beaver dams, imprint more Rexes, and continue building. It was now day 59, and I was getting very close to my first boss fight. The Rexes I would use for the first boss fight were now completely grown up. The last thing I did that day was craft up some primitive Rex saddles because I did not have a BP yet. Day 60, I finished my throne room by placing my throne. And no, it can't be a chair. It has to be a toilet. Most of the day was spent just raising up baby Therizinos and leveling up Rexes so they'd be ready for the fight. At one point, I left my Maywing behind so I could run around on my Rex to kill stuff, and I guess a Carno found it. That was a bummer. Day 61, I took care of my Theries in the morning, and then I was finally ready to go fight Hattie and Skull. Alright, doggos, game on. On day 62, I was feeling pretty good now that I had beaten one of the 7 bosses. I had no time to celebrate though. I took one of my Megatheriums to the bear cave at the northern end of the map, and let's just say it was a great place to get a Megatherium experience. Damn, Daniel! There were quite a few loot crates there as well, and honestly, none of them were bad. Not only that, but there's a room where you can just straight up harvest all the honey you could ever want. It was a no-brainer. I would definitely come back here in the future for sure. When I returned home, I raised my children and then crafted more heals and grapples so I could do more caving runs. Day 63, I returned to the lava cave to do another drop hunt, but at the entrance I nearly died to a Carno. After somehow surviving that, it was only natural that I would later contract mega rabies and fall into the lava. I tried using the transfer tool to get my stuff back, but you can't transfer your stuff back to your inventory if your body is still there. So a few times I just straight up jumped into the lava to try and get a few punches off of my body to harvest it. I suppose this worked eventually because I was able to get my stuff back. Despite all this, I wasn't done with caves yet for the day. I still wanted to go visit the bear cave again. Once more, there were tons of drops, but none of them were good this time. The first part of day 64 I forgot to record again, which was stupid because I actually got an artifact. The biggest bummer is that I think it's one of the coolest places in the map, one of the coolest artifact chambers I had ever seen. Fortunately, I did start recording again before I headed into the swamp cave. With the Megatherium, once again, this cave was a breeze. But now I officially had all of the artifacts. On my way back home, I visited the Aberration Cave again to see if there would be any drops, and this time there was. There was a yellow drop with a pistol, which was alright, but then there was a red drop which had exactly what I needed.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Day 65, I put the finishing touches onto my base. I'm sorry it took so long, but there was just too much to do in the meantime. Then I went back to the bear cave to level up another Megatherium. There were no drops, but it wasn't a total loss because I'd still be bringing back heaps of meat, narco berries, and fiber that the Megatherium had collected. I got incredibly lucky again on day 66 in the Aberration Cave where I found a red drop with a blueprint for a Therizino saddle. The Ark gods are on my side. And almost the entire rest of the day was spent going around and killing things for boss tributes. And guys, you'll never believe this, but at the end of the day, I crafted one whole simple kibble. Ladies, one at a time. On day 67, I was doing a whole bunch of kibble crafting. I tamed a female Moschops to breed with my male so I could start making superior kibble. It's mostly that and making extraordinary kibble from my Deinonychus eggs so I could tame a Eutyrannus later. Day 68, I was on the hunt. During my many travels, I had seen plenty of Uties and rhinos wandering up there in the snow. Now it was just a matter of finding a good level for each. At first, I had no luck finding anything, so I returned home to imprint my Therizinos, but once I returned to the search, I found a 145 male rhino down in the southeast corner of the map, exactly what I needed to breed. Knocking it out was a little bit tricky because I didn't want it to drown in the ocean here, but somehow I managed to keep it up. Not too much longer later, I found a level 135 Eutyrannus male with decent stamina and melee stats. Then I knocked it out safari style from the back of my griffin, which made me feel like a Chad. Day 69.
Nice.
The rhino finished taming and I decided I would try to tame a fjord hawk. That did not go well, especially after these raptors almost killed me. I'll just tame a fjord hawk some other time. Instead, I went to Asgard to see if I could find the Rock Drake Trench. I couldn't find it, so I looked up how to get there, but in the meantime, I also found out that I couldn't go down there without hazard gear because there's radiation. Wonderful. It had gotten late though, so I went home and sat on my throne and admired the RGB castle around me. You see the colors? It was a gamer castle. Day 70, I went AFK while I waited for my baby Therizino to want attention. The rhinos had given birth, but I completely neglected to feed it, and so it died. Don't call CPS on me, I'll do better next time, I swear. Once again, I returned to the bear cave to level up a Megatherium, and the loot there was also once again bad. Day 71, I finished up looting the bear cave, and on my way back home, I decided I would visit the lava cave again to level up another Megatherium. And as we all know very well by now, every time I visit the lava cave, I am certain to die. After that, I began rounding up all my Megatheriums at the next bus terminal, Bela. All the Megatheriums got cryosickness, but that was okay because I actually forgot my runes, so I had to go back home to get them. Once my Megatheriums were done waking up, then it was time to fight the bee. Yeah, I curb stomped her. I wasn't really worried about this one. Day 72, I went around harvesting hide because I needed an incredible amount in order to craft all of the saddles I wanted to make. I actually found the Giga from day 1 and I thought it was perfect because I still needed a Giganotosaurus heart. Of course, it was only natural that one of my dives would hit the water and I would fall off. As soon as that happened, I knew it was Jover. Returned, somehow the griffin hadn't been killed, so I was able to whistle him out of there. And because these things have so much darn health, I wasn't able to actually kill it until the stroke of midnight. Day 73, I hadn't forgotten about that rock drake cave, but now I had a plan to retrieve the egg. Step 1, I wanted to tame an Andrewsarchus, one of the new critters on the map. I learned you had to throw the honey down so it would come up to it and start eating. Once it did, you would hop on its back and proceed to play this little mini game until it was tamed or just killed you, one or the other. Fortunately for me though, it tamed. The next step was making some hazmat gear. I collected a bunch of condensed gas from the sulfur fields on the lava island and then some blue gems from the aberration cave and I was all set. Day 74 and it was time to visit the rock drake cave. I was a bit nervous at first because the areas were a lot tighter than I thought they would be, but I managed to only aggro a few, so we were all good. After I managed to kill all my aggressors, I nabbed this level 180 egg and made my fast escape. When I got back home, I hatched some Therazinos and then went out to the redwoods so I could put down some tree sap taps. This was the first step in order to get myself some veggie cakes, but I would have to focus on that later. Day 75, I delivered some of the Megapithecus tributes to the terminal in the aberration cave and spent the rest of the day harvesting hide. Day 76 was huge, I hatched my rock drake egg and I finally had Wiggums back. After that, I once again spent most of the day harvesting hide. There was a point in time where I went into the aberration cave so I could clear out these Perlovias, which were kind of a nuisance. Using a grenade and grapples, it was no problem. That night, I finally had enough to craft all 19 Therizino saddles, so I took another Mind Wipe tonic and crafted. Day 77, my rhinos had twins, and I was actually around to feed them so they didn't die this time. You see, CPS, I can be a good dad. I still hadn't raised my Magmasaur, so I needed ambergris. You can only find ambergris in one place on Fjordur. In the deep, deep sea. My favorite place to be. There was a whole squadron of mosasaurs and a toothy waiting for me at the bottom, but I managed to somehow tank it all in my Basilosaurus and win. I'm not even gonna take credit for any of that, I owe it all to my tame. I got as much ambergris as I could carry, just to be safe, and when I got home I leveled up a Therizino via child abuse. I leveled up some more Therizinos using Rex babies on day 78. I also finally hatched my Magmasaur now that I actually had what I needed to raise him. Wiggums finished growing and I built an S+ hatchery for the Rex pen so I could start mass producing Rex eggs for experience. Then, of course, I had to take a long-awaited joyride on Wiggums. I missed him so much. Day 79, I went out to tame a Diodon so I could heal my Therizinos after leveling them. While I was out and about, though, I was fortunate enough to experience one of those broken ARK physics moments with the Zankylosaurus. I collected some more vegetables from that farm, then returned home where I made veggie cakes. I needed a refill for berries for the feeding trough, so I went out on a Therizino to collect a bunch. And I didn't realize at the time, but these things are actually amazing for harvesting hide if you use the bite attack. Day 80, I felt like I was finally ready to fight Steinbjorn. And I know what you're thinking, Choofy, no, don't fight him with Therizinos. Well, you know what, it's too late, so suck it up, I guess. Out of all the things I didn't research, it had to be Jotunheim. I crafted primitive fur armor, which was not enough to keep me warm, and I didn't even have a beaver. Did I just say beaver? I meant to say otter. I didn't have an otter. So of course, as soon as I spawned in, I began dying. Very fast. I had plenty of heals on me though, so it wasn't all too bad. I managed to stay alive down to the terminal and I began the fight. And that's when I realized I made a mistake.
Oh, no, 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 no.
I was so invested in the tiny output of damage my Therizinos were doing that I didn't even notice my health and I died. This was a pretty rough moment for me. I had no idea if I had lost my tames, and I had almost certainly lost all of my stuff. But I still had 20 more days. I would need some serious luck to beat this guy, but it could be done. Day 81, I decided to get back to the grind rather than pout. I had no time to dwell on my failure, now was the time for action. And maybe, just maybe, luck would be on my side again. Day 87, I felt like I had made a comeback. I had done the research, tamed the Gigas, now all I needed to do was figure out whether or not I could survive in Jotunheim. This time I teleported over with my best fur armor and my otter, and when I got there, I was not ice cubing. Now, I didn't bring my Gigas with me, but I went down to check the boss terminal to see if things were still alive, and everybody was still alive. including the boss, unfortunately. I booked it back home so I could level up one of my gigas, then ran back so I could finally engage in the fight properly. See, I didn't even need 2 gigas, I could have clapped him with 1. The loot was a huge W too, because I got a blueprint for an Ascendant Tyrannus saddle and a Mastercraft Rhino saddle. Day 88, I began delivering tributes to the boss terminals. Periodically throughout the day, I would return home so I could raise my Therizino army. The only tribute I still needed to get more of was Basilosaurus blubber, so I found this one in the shallows and decided to kill it on my giga because but then it didn't give me any blubber, so I was like Day 89 was a load of bullcrap. I spent most of the day looking for a Basilosaurus, which should have been pretty common, but I just wasn't finding one anywhere. I also had this near-death experience, which was great. After that, I went to deliver all the dragon tributes to its terminal. I explored a little bit deeper into the cave just because I could and discovered that it was actually the mines of Moria. I spent a good chunk of time just wandering around in there because I'm a nerd, what can I say? On day 90, I was starting to feel really anxious. I only had 10 days left to beat the map. A huge chunk of the day was spent wandering around, grabbing as many silica pearls as I could to craft the Tyrannus saddle. I needed over 1,000 of them to craft it, but I knew it would be worth it. And as I delivered a couple of my Therizinos to the Dragon Terminal, I realized that I was truly in the endgame. I also knew that I essentially had one shot to beat this. If I lost on any of the bosses, it would probably mean game over. This challenge was wild. I'm slowly becoming more and more familiar with the game as I play it. If you're still watching by this point, thank you so much for seeing it through to the end. You're awesome. I love you. Big wet smooch on the cheek. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Peace out.